Hey everyone, Temporal here, and for this session, not quite the right word, today what we're covering is the experimental patch notes that went up yesterday. These went up on June 24th, that's the 25th, and we will be looking at the notes. The big highlight, what we really did in this patch is we saw a hit scan nerf, and we specifically saw a hit scan nerf for their maximum range. We saw some slight adjustments to address this, but really this is going to be a general hit scan, a general hit scan nerf when they're playing at max ranges. So specifically to get into what they are, here's the reminder that this affects all of them now because they're all on the same balance effectively, all of our platforms. But what we're looking at here is the general update is hit scan damage now scales to 30% at maximum fall off range, down from 50% for the following heroes. And what hit scan, these are our hit scan heroes, but what hit scan means is when you click the fire button, the bullet is instantly where you placed your crosshair. It just instantly covers that distance. There's no travel time. A projectile would be like a fair rocket, a Zen orb. Hit scan would be, well, these heroes here. Ashe, Bap's left click, Bastion, McCree's left click, those things. Whereas McCree's flashbang would be a projectile. Baptiste's right click would be a projectile. Travel time versus no travel time. So what we're looking at is hit scan damage now scales to 30% at maximum fall off range, down from 50% for the following hero. So if you're at the absolute maximum range, what's going to happen is it used to be, hey, you would do 50% of what your perfect range would be. So if you're shooting someone point blank, you'd do 50%. This is different than spread because heroes like Wrecking Ball would have spread to them, Soldier a little bit of spread, Bastion would have some spread. This is specifically not less bullets are hitting them because they're further away, so they're small on your screen and they don't hit them, versus when they're close on your screen and your bullets all hit them. This is your bullet does less damage when they are physically further away on your screen. And it's now down to 30% at maximum range, which is a pretty big nerf. It used to be you could do half of your damage if you were way outside of your effective range, which made some of these mid-range heroes like Soldier 76, McCree, yes, they still got absolutely crushed by someone like Widowmaker when she was inside her effective range, or when she was playing at her effective range, which she's a long-range hit scan, their medium-range hit scan, but it made them very effective against other members of the cast who weren't long-range specialists than they perhaps would have been expected to be. Then against, say, projectile heroes like Genji or Pharah, who have to wait for their weapon to travel all that distance, and their weapon traveling all that distance can be seen and can be dodged. So it really made these heroes pretty darn effective outside their maximum range. Bringing it down to 30%, that's a lot less damage. Now it's a scaling effect, so it's not like, aha, you break this and it's suddenly this. It's a scaling down thing as you're going to their maximum range. But that the thing outside their maximum fall off range is now down to 30% from 50 is a pretty meaningful change. And it's probably something that will help bring other heroes a little more into the forefront. I think we could have, I know that I'll finish going through it before I get into my stance on it. In general, I like this though, to be honest. And this is a reversion. We did see, I think it was when Ashe came out, we saw that this got changed. This was what it used to be like. So in some ways, we're going back. Developer comments, this change may be difficult to notice immediately as it scales damage over a range slightly more than before, but it will lower the impact of hit scan damage outside their intended optimal ranges. Yep. Then we have Bastion, his recon mode, so that's his run around as a robot mode. Weapon spread reduced from 1.5 to 1.2. Developer comments, we're making Bastion's configuration recon weapon more reliable to help strengthen his run and gun gameplay when moving between spots where he wants to post with Sentry, which is his turret form. So that's fine. Bastion isn't going to be a powerful and strong hero in high ranks. He's just not unless he gets major changes. These aren't those major changes, but hey, it helps him defend as he's moving, and moving Bastion, moving from one place to set up to another place to set up, not being predictable, is really the best way to play him. So this is a Bastion buff. Now we can put that against a Bastion nerf because Bastion is a hit scan, and Bastion sees, hey, this does hurt him, drop from 50 to 30% at his maximum range, and he's a hero who you could actually outrange. One of the ways to break Bastion is to throw Hanzo arrows and far rockets at him from super far away. So this is a nerf to him, but he gets a bit of a buff, at least in his moving between areas thing, to make up for that, unlike some of the rest of these, which is fine. He is not a powerful hero when you're talking about the higher levels of gameplay. Then we've got D.Va, Calmech. This is fine. The damage area reduced from 3 to 2.5 meters when she does that, when she does her Calmech, which is important because that does mean that her meme-tastic pull down mechs to eliminate people is going to perhaps be less influential because its range got nerfed. It's going to not get people that are trying to get away from it a little more. So I think that's good. I think, honestly, it's a little silly that it's in the game the way it is, her call mech, but so be it. And then this is just targeting the specific meta or targeting Echo in general, where we had a meta in Owl. I know it wasn't super watched, but we had a meta in Owl that involved a lot of Echoes copying the other team's D.Va and literally just hurling self-destruct after self-destruct after self-destruct at each other in both directions, like just self-destructs all over the place. And you would have, before the mech even blew up, the Echo, because Echo has an accelerated rate at which she gets ult charge, would be able to get her new mech, so she'd instantly be able to remech, and she'd instantly be able to even overcharge, and then be able to, hey, I'm looking to throw my next mech as soon as I'm meched type thing. Like we would see crazy amounts of self-destructs be thrown out during duplicates, and this is really to target that. It's targeting a very specific meta, in my opinion, so it's a little silly, but I suppose D.Va's always been a good copy target, so we'll deal with it. And they're basically going to say the same thing, no longer building ultimate charge in the window of using between self-destructs. There we go. Accelerate ultimate charge enabled her to call mech available before the self-destruct explosion went off. Right. So he needs a little bit of a buff here. I don't think this is enough. I think he's just going to be in trouble. Soldier 76, heavy pulse rifle, damage fall off is disabled when tactical visor is active. So damage fall off, talked about this. Damage fall off nerf in general happens. He gets this, which damage fall off is disabled when tactical visor is active. This will make tactical visor effective for more than just aim assist, which slightly loses value as players' aim improves. Perhaps more than slightly, but that's fine. So this is helpful because it does let that tac visor do something else besides, hey, I like having faster reloads and losing my headshots. So it is nice to have it do something more than that. It perhaps lets him play against his optimal range. I don't still really think it does that because he simply doesn't do enough damage to fight, say, a Widow in her optimal range, but it'll at least let him potentially get the jump on other mid-range heroes from a longer range, or if they try to leave his range, him to stay on them. So it's a little buff. He was already behind hit scan cast in general. Like when I talk about hit scan were strong in Overwatch before this patch and stronger than their non-hit scan counterparts, really who we're talking about is Ashe, McCree, Tracer, who's not on this list, but Ashe and McCree are really who we're talking about. Widowmaker is in there. BAP, pretty good. They're not generally thought of as a hit scan, thought of as a support, but yes, when we're talking about the damage types, we were seeing a lot of McCree and Ashe and some Widowmaker. A lot of McCree and Ashe as very powerful heroes. We, of course, saw at the end of last year, beginning of this year, Ashe saw a lot of play. It was Tracer, Ashe, Echo were the DPS that got used, period. And then in the following meta, we had McCree was happening when Brawl was happening. In Double Bubble, we would continue to have a lot of McCree swapped in there, specifically for the Double Bubble battles. We've seen McCree just continue to exist. We sometimes see tech swaps to get Ashe in there. Oh, look, we're running a ton of hit scan. So again, I don't think a nerf targeting hit scan is bad, but I think we need to be careful about the casualties who already weren't great, like Soldier 76 and Bastion, getting hit too hard from this. I do like to see that we have that being thought of, though this I think is fine because I don't think you can just make Bastion good. This I'm not convinced is good enough, but this doesn't have to be the patch that fixes Soldier. And then we have Widowmaker. Widow's Kiss, damage fall off range increased from 60 to 85 to 70 to 100 meters. So, developer comment on this, we're adjusting her optimal range to be slightly further out to account for some map locations where counter sniping was common, but just barely outside the effective range with the damage fall off. For Widowmaker, the sniping damage fall off is mainly in place to restrict the lethality of mid-air grapple shots at extreme distances on some maps. Yeah, so this doesn't change much. Most of the game doesn't take place at this range. Most of Overwatch does not take place at this range. There's very limited places where you can take advantage of these kinds of extreme ranges. Ruins would be one of them. Havana has a couple spots where you can get sort of close to this range and have it be relevant. So this isn't a huge deal, but this does help counteract for her specifically some of this, hey, fall off things in general. I honestly think it's silly that scoped heroes have fall off, period. I think scoped heroes, when they're scoped, just shouldn't have fall off. That was originally how it was, but they changed it at one point. And this is just them going, we don't want Widow, who is supposed to be the extreme distance hero, getting hit too hard by this, because she is supposed to play in her effective range. And clearly what this patch is doing for Hitscan is it's trying to not make them effective beyond their effective range, which I think this is going to do a good job of. So I'm actually overall happy to see this patch. It's a somewhat targeted patch, like this is clearly the hit scan nerf patch, but I think that was necessary because again, if we look at the heroes that have mostly been useful, while they're not all the ranged hit scan hero, the DPS heroes that have been useful have overwhelmingly swung towards the hit scan side of the aisle. We've had Tracer's been a useful hero in the last 6 months. We've had Ashe has been a useful hero. We've had McCree has been a useful hero. We've had Sombra has been a useful hero. We've had Reaper has been a useful hero. And then we've had Echo and Mei. And this is mostly it when we think of what have our useful DPS heroes been. And really, this is 5 versus 2. And some of you could come out here and say, no, there's been this situation where Junkrat's been useful and Symmetra had her heyday, and, what we should actually be talking about is, no, it's really mostly been these guys with any level of serious play, and if we're serious, Reaper and Mei, I guess I'll make it clear that that's a Mei, that's a McCree, are both very specialized. Like making Mei or Reaper work out of very specific comps, out of very specific situations, they're not terribly flexible heroes. So when we really look at the more viable, both on ladder and in multiple meta heroes, we're really looking at 4 and 1, which is only more extreme. So I think it made sense to have a nerf that sort of targeted Hitscan. Hitscan were running around more powerful than the rest of the DPS cast. And just to put that in perspective for you guys, let's pull up our Overwatch heroes list because I think that's useful to talk about this. And we've got our Overwatch heroes. And let's go to damage because that's what we're talking about here. And we look at this and we see our damage, and as we get ourselves a nice screen for this, perfect, we can see, again, good hero, okay hero. I probably didn't give him enough respect. So, okay hero. Maybe even trending towards good hero, okay hero, bad hero, okay hero, good hero. And we look at this and it's like, oh, look, we've selected okay hero. We've selected some stuff and, oh, hey, we're in this. Most of our good heroes are in this hit scan world. And if we go out to our okay heroes, the ratio gets a little better, but not much better. So, yes, I think if we're trying to keep the Overwatch cast relatively balanced, we're trying to have a balanced game, at least within the roles, we might be abandoning inter-role balance. We might have to going into Overwatch 2 because we might need to make tanks king pieces, queen pieces, however you want to think about it, where they're more powerful than the rest of the cast. We'll see what Blizzard chooses to do there. But if we're trying to, within a role, keep things balanced, then we don't want to have, unless we're thinking of hit scan and flux and projectile as different roles, and we're not because nothing stops someone from going double hit scan. In fact, we've seen quite a bit of double hit scan. We've even seen in contenders a lot of rosters go, hey, both of our flex DPS are in right now, and we're going to run double hit scan because that's the right solution for most of the map. And it's just like, well, that's just silly. That's just silly from a perspective. If you're going to have these heroes in the games that use projectiles, that have these moves that are going, hey, they have to be predictive with where opponents go more so than hit scan players do. They're less precise. Their damage isn't really enough higher right now than hit scan or in the current live patch to justify using them in most situations. Most flex DPS, projectile DPS, get away by going, okay, our damage isn't really enough higher to justify using us, so you're using us for our ult power, which would be, yeah, Duplicate's a good ult. Yeah, Dragon Blade is a good ult. Hanzo's less so, but Hanzo plays a lot more like a hit scan, and that's sort of the thing. Hanzo's just become, we'll make his projectile so fast, and then we'll give it an ability to make it even faster, that he effectively becomes more like a hit scan, and that's how he gets away with having a bad ult as a projectile. And these are much better ults than Bob or High Noon is. But you have to either give them silly powerful ults, and we know the issues that Genji has run into with that. Blizzard, hey, better ults. You either have to give them silly powerful ults, or they become pretty worthless. Pharah, not a great ult, not a good hero. And that's sort of what we're looking at. So you either need to go, we're just going to make the flex DPS heroes ults even better, or make the hit scan ults even worse. And I don't think there's room to make some of these hit scan ults worse, like High Noon, and have it be engaging, fun gameplay around that hero. Or you needed to go, hey, we're going to level down the neutral game of the hit scan, or level up the neutral game of the flex DPS. And the flex DPS, that looks like it mostly wasn't going to happen. They've shied away too many times from giving Genji any sort of real damage buff. They'd already nerfed Echo's damage, and I think nerfing Echo's damage was fine because Echo was tuned above the rest of the flex DPS. Absolutely made sense when they did that. They didn't directly nerf her damage. They nerfed her number of shots that she had, but they effectively nerfed her damage output. So that made sense. I'm actually totally fine seeing this patch. Now it just becomes a question of how our DPS is a role compared to others if we've nerfed hit scan like this, but I don't think DPS are in any particular trouble as a role, especially in a 2-2-2 lock world where you have to run two of them anyways. Even with that in mind, I don't think that this patch particularly destroys them in any way, shape, or form. So I look at this and go, hey, this is a pretty good patch, actually. That might be controversial. I'm sure we're going to have some DPS players who go, what? I hate this. This is terrible. I don't like this. Specifically, I suspect we will have hit scan players who feel this way. But if you've followed what I've thought, what I've been thinking, saying on this channel for the last 6 months, you've known that I've been of the opinion, and it's backable. We can see, like I said, contenders teams that are running double hit scan while having two projectile players in, just because that makes too much sense. Virtually every flex DPS player forever, not forever, but for much of Overwatch's history, has had to be able to play some hit scan, but you've seen a lot of them playing harder, more direct hit scans like Ashe, like McCree, like Widow these days than you have in the past. So if you guys have comments, please do throw them up in chat. We're happy to talk this through more, see what other people think. I'm happy to discuss my thoughts more if people want to pick at them. Or if you want to be involved in these kinds of discussions in the future, the best way to do that is to join the Discord in the description below, and then you will get pings if you go into the Discord to the get notifications role. You can go there, react to become a watcher, and then you'll get pings. So when we cover topics like new patches that have come out, or any sort of other topic like, hey, how does coaching work, or does coaching work on low-level teams, or any sort of topic in the world that you might be, not anything in the world, but any sort of topic that we cover that looks interesting to you, you can see when we go live on that, and you can hop in here to be a part of chat, to have your voice heard on the subject. So those are what my thoughts are. I'm going to give you guys a moment to put anything you want up there in chat because you haven't been totally active there, which is a little unusual for you guys. If you guys don't have thoughts, I'm just going to take that as you all agree with me, which makes a lot of sense because I'm absolutely right on this. No, seriously. I'll give you guys just a minute to get any thoughts in there, to challenge any of this, to ask who you think who I think should or shouldn't be nerfed or buffed next, anything like that you want to get in there, go ahead and do so. If there's not anything, we can wrap it up here, and that is just fine. Oh, chat's bugged. Okay, let me fix it. Let me fix it. It says live chat's okay. Let's try and go into live chat. Let's disable that, re-enable that. That's not going to do anything. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and have to pull it from my Discord since it looks like chat is bugged today, which is unfortunate. But if you guys want to throw stuff up in the general chat or the member chit chat of the Discord, I will pay attention to write that. You can SC them. you can SC them. I don't know what SC. Can you see them? I don't see any chat over in the video, but if that just means it's bugged, so be it. If you guys want to type chat things that you're, oh, screenshot, then hold. Okay, got it. Interesting. I don't know why chat is bugged. Okay, here we go. So from Val, we've got, I don't like any buffs to Hanzo. He should not be able to one-shot from luck, make him do 199 damage max. Well, okay, then you just permanently attach a mercy to him, right? Thank you, Crunch. This helps. I mean, then he's unplayable. He's literally a sniper. The problem with Hanzo is that he struggles from a hero design standpoint of, is he going to be a sniper? Okay, if he's going to be a sniper, that sort of makes sense, except if he's a sniper, is he going to be a sniper? Okay, well, something like Sonic Arrow makes sense for a sniper. Sure, the ability to one-shot with headshots makes sense for a sniper, but then he's also a close-range burst hero with Storm Arrow, or in a previous iteration, Scatter Arrow. The thought might have been, hey, Scatter Arrow made sense for a sniper. You use Sonic Arrow, you Scatter Arrow around a corner, and you get people. But the best use case of it was actually you scatter into the ground right below a tank and they get blown up at point blank range. And Sonic Arrow is much the same. Oh, someone jumped on top of you, a flanker jumped on top of you, a Winston jumped on top of you, someone is near you. Okay, you got out to deflect, you dealt with their bubble, whatever the case is. Now I'm going to pop Storm Arrow and I'm going to blow them up at close range. So Hanzo is stuck a little bit in a, well, does he want to be a sniper or does he want to be a bit of a poke hero with close range burst, sort of like a McCree? And the truth is, he's been designed more and more like the McCree. They've been leaning harder and harder into that. Also has his, jump ability. So that's fine that he's been leaning more towards the McCree, but things like his one-shot headshot ability, things like his wall climb, things like his Sonic Arrow, all really fit a sniper better. So he's kind of being pulled in two different directions. And the truth is, he does both of them a little too well. He's not like a compromise between McCree and that. Like, he's in some ways, he's a pretty good sniper while also being a really good moderate range burst, which really turns him into, hey, he's a heavy spam poke hero who also has strong close range burst. And you can even almost live with that compromise if they just gutted his mobility a bit. Like, I really think it's time for his little puff jump, his little double spacebar, oh, I leap, I lunge, whatever, to just go away. Like, if that went away, he would at least be more punishable when people did get on top of him, and you'd be a little more accepting of what he does in terms of, hey, I'm going to do this from a sniper standpoint, and I'm going to do this. I don't think they're going to take away either of those roles. I'd prefer that they take away his heavy burst role at close range. Sniping is fine. And if you hit someone with a headshot at close range, I don't care. I care more about, hey, we're going to shoot, lunge jump away, Storm Arrow, blow something up, while also retaining sniper abilities. I would prefer to get rid of the close range stuff. I don't think either of those is going to happen, though. So what I would like to instead happen is it's just time to get rid of lunge. He does not need to have lunge. Snack time temporal, here we go. I'm uneducated about this. Does this reduce the damage from headshots outside of max fall off range or just body shots? Headshot is just a multiplier. Yeah, headshot is just a multiplier. So it will decrease headshot damage outside max fall off range as well because your initial damage is lower and the multiplier from it being a headshot, you're multiplying a lower number there. Okay, let's catch up on chat here. My question is, if the damage fall off range for these heroes is increased, example, 76's damage is 50% at 25 meters before random numbers, is it still 50% at... Okay, hold on. So fall off damage range for these heroes is increased. 50% at 25 meters, your random numbers. Is it still 50% at 25? And now that, well, Soldier 76's wasn't increased. Soldier 76's range from what we saw wasn't, except when he's doing that where he loses his fall off completely during his ult. So the only one who had their range increased, it looked like, was Widow. And that's not really an issue. You probably weren't challenging Widow's max fall off range very often, truth be told, and you're going to even less often now. So I wouldn't really worry about that one. You didn't really have that happen. There's a scaling down effect that you've got to pay attention to in terms of as you leave, as you hit the range increments, but you weren't, Soldier 76 didn't have his buffed, so I'm not sure that question makes sense. If the damage fall off range for these heroes is increased, If it's increased, okay, well, we could get into the theoretical world. 76's damage is 50% to 25 meters. Is it still 50%? Well, it would depend. That would be a decision. Yeah, that would be a decision they'd have to make. That's too hypothetical. Um, doesn't really do anything at all for Bastion. Makes him a little bit better. It does make him a little bit better when he's moving. He would benefit more from his hitbox, his personal hitbox being shrunk, his hero model being shrunk a bit while moving around. That would help him more, but this doesn't hurt. I don't know if that would help him more. That would be another thing that he could get, but this doesn't hurt him. It's a buff, but I don't feel like it's a meaningful one, even slightly. Anything that's really meaningful for Bastion would be outright oppressive in the ranks that Bastion is already a terror in. So Bastion is really hard to buff. I think this is a place that you can be like, hey, at least you're buffing something that rewards aim a little. And he is technically getting nerfed by this, so he can justify it. He's also the weakest hero on this list, so you can justify it. But again, Bastion is a hero that I think they've just accepted that unless they do a massive rework to, you can't really buff him without making a meaningful section of the player base absolutely hate it, like absolutely hate it in him being a terror. We do not need Ironclad back. We do not need the silly Ironclad super uneliminatable Bastion back. That was terrifying. I don't usually ask the world of super low bronze for how the updates will affect you as gameplay. Bastion joke. Okay, but it still exists. I'm happy to see Soldier buff. He's never felt the best choice for anything, just an all-rounder, so I'm happy to see him do better, though. As you said, it's probably not enough for my FPS man. Yeah, it's not. I don't understand a Widowfang change. It feels like a neat thing. It feels like a neat thing that changes nothing. Almost nothing. In terms of understanding it, damage fall off. I mean, they changed her optimal range, and it's to counteract they don't want her when you're playing in the 60 to 85 meter range to end up in situations where whoops, she has a little fall off damage, so someone survived with 15 HP. Someone survived with 25, 30 HP because that's not supposed to happen. Sniper. And Hanzo won't have that problem because projectile. And projectiles mostly don't have fall off. Don't talk to Mei about that. Mei still shouldn't have fall off, but hey. Okay, let's take a look here. He means the scaling down, I believe. The range increase, referring to 50% soldier example from Joshua. I think I've answered that as best I'm able. Sorry. Um, I would need that explained a little bit better to answer it better. Hopefully that makes sense. Joshua, if it still doesn't make sense, talk to me. Try to phrase it differently, perhaps. Um, okay. I mean, as a main, this patch makes my life mildly better since the hit scan comes slightly closer to me, so I like this. This is true. So who has hit the hardest? Is McCree and Ash still top tier? I don't know if McCree and Ash will still be top tier. Like, if I look at this patch, that's actually a good question. So if we look at this patch, will McCree and Ash still be top tier heroes? Probably hurts McCree harder than Ash just based on what their range increments are. I could be misremembering Ash's range increments, but I think that's probably true because I don't think she's going to hit much fall off while scoped. It's hard to predict perfectly. I mean, this is only affecting mostly their maximum fall off increment, so that helps. I don't think that these heroes have in any way been dumpstered, but are they going to go, "Hey, we're now among the other top heroes? Are we now at the levels of Sombras and Junkrats and Hanzos and Doomfists?" No, I think they'll still be good. I don't think this is too heavy-handed. I really don't think that for these lead heroes, Ash McCree, that this is in any way too heavy-handed. I think they're going to be fine. I don't know that they're going to be like. I don't know that McCree is going to. How do I put this? Like, okay, they might not be the top DPS anymore because we might revert to something that's a little more flank heavy. We're probably going to see something with a little more, hey, let's see a bit more in terms of Tracer. Let's see a bit more in terms of Echo. I'm not worried about Echo Thera taking over in general. I know some people have worries about that. I'm not worried about that in organized play even remotely, but we could see more hard, more heavily Tracer Echo type combinations, or we could see stuff that gets a little more, okay, we can get a little bit more viability out of using some of these Torb, Junkrat, Sim type heroes when ranges become a bit of an issue. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw sort of Tracer Echo take over as the leaders here. That would not at all be wild to me. Hanzo could be in there. Yeah, I could see something more divey taking over a hybrid dive type situation instead of the amount of double hit scan that we've seen and the level of hey McCree fits in everything. McCree shouldn't get played as the he fits into everything thing anymore because he's actually more counterable now. Like he's actually more able to go, hey, you're not near infinite distance poke and a swap over to Widowmaker to punish you actually makes more sense now. In theory, a swap over to Ashe to punish you should also be a harder punish now. So I think what we'll see is we'll see less in terms of the McCree as the everything fits in every comp because why not situation. And that'll go back to being Tracer's role. Sorry, but that's sort of true. Who has hit the hardest? Hit the hardest is McCree. McCree will have the biggest fall from this one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we should just make May's primary fire snow flurry thing hit scan. Okay, okay. Is it McCree who gets clapped the most by this? Yeah, I agree. Just a massive beam of snow. uh, they should give May that snowball one hit elimination to her comp. That could be a thing. That could be a thing. Uh, Okay, so 4 out of 8 hit scan heroes good. 1 out of 9 projectile heroes. Yeah, you saw. I know. Uh, with one of the projectiles, Sim being one of the worst in Overwatch. I mean, I actually shouldn't really be calling Sim a projectile hero. Her primary fire is hit scan, so yeah. Uh, with one of the projectiles, Sim being one of the worst in Overwatch and used as a taxi half the time for your team, I don't know, Crunch. I think you need to spend some more time on Lijiang Tower. Plus, Dallas Fuel did win a thing with her. You know, they were like, "Hey, let's go do some stuff. Let's win some critical matches with their Sim in the McCree spot." So there's something to be said for her. I'm not a Genji player, but I do think he should be a very strong hero, strong enough to be meta. The week where he was meta last season was one of the most entertaining weeks of LoL I've ever seen. Genji shows some really good stuff when he's strong, and Genji, when he is strong, does get to show off a lot of out mechanicking your opponent, which is kind of fun to watch. Like it's interesting to watch, and it doesn't actually feel that bad to lose to. So like at higher levels, anyways. So like yes, a strong Genji. Fine with me. I'm fine with a stronger Genji than we've currently got in the game. I would be perfectly happy with upgrading Genji's neutral game. Um, I'd be perfectly happy with that. I'm actually wouldn't be too worried about it upping his ult game either, truth be told, but we have Nano in the game, so we can't, which I know, I know, I know. The thing is, you sort of need Nano Blade for his ult to really be that scary, so he's sort of in a bad place. Whereas ult isn't really powerful enough, but Nano Blade is scary, but his neutral game is just too weak. Like, his neutral game is just too weak for the current iteration of Genji. And if your decision is, hey, we want to up the, if we want to up the level of this, we're going to have strong this, we're going to have strong ults to make our projectile heroes work because we're not willing to make their damage high enough relative to hit scan, but we did lower hit scan damage. So maybe we've done that now. You, in my mind, would need to touch this, but I don't think they're going to. Even though they've broke plenty of other interactions where boosting Dragon Strike doesn't do anything anymore. Why? We can pretend that follows consistent logic, but it doesn't. You could make a similar decision and just do something with Nano with Genji. Anyway, it does need to be a Genji discussion. But yes, Genji is a prime example of, hey, Mostly, they're just not strong enough. And Genji is the prime example of that, of a hero who is a very, it takes a lot of effort to get good at him. And even the best Genji players in the world, most of the time, can't make him work. And when people go, hey, we're going to run like an Orisa poke comp and we're going to mix in a Genji, we're going to go 5 poke heroes plus Genji, I usually still look at that and raise my eyes and go, you guys are wrong. Even though you've seen some L teams do it, it hasn't had the most amazing success. Genji has the same issues as Pharah if he's oppressive in low rank, so Blizzard ends up being cautious around buffs for him. Yeah, that's true. Genji could get a nice, but that's another example. Like Pharah's another hero where it's like Pharah's in the game and Echo is just better. Like the only thing that Pharah is really better than Echo at is consistent tank pressure, and like that does not make up for the added precision that Echo has with her weapon, the added precision of flight control that Echo has, the way better ult that Echo has. Like this is so much better of a hero. It's not even funny, and it's a shame because these were sort of the original two heroes for flex DPS to specialize in. Like, do you have a Genji main with a good Pharah with an okay Pharah, or a Pharah main with an okay Genji? And I don't know. I liked that. I thought it was good design. I liked having one of these two on most heroes. Maybe that's just like nostalgia goggles, nostalgia vision, whatever you want to call it. But I thought that was perfectly reasonable. I don't strongly dislike Echo or anything, but she's a symptom of power creep. And and she had to be, because even with duplicate, which is a great ult, and this better position and this flight, she's still had a lot of situations where she's hanging out in the meta, but you might run an Ashe in her spot type stuff. And it's not even questionable to run an Ashe in her spot. It's totally, totally viable, and you can even do it full time, and you're not wrong. Uh, Genji could get a nice buff in just reducing his cooldowns. Yeah, maybe, maybe. Temp can't see chat. Guys were secret. Yeah, there's clearly some sort of bug there. Okay. At Temporal, we joke about clickbait, but when you actually did that, it seems like when you actually did it, then it seems like it didn't suit the branding of the image. The clickbait hypermarket is already floored, so attracting smart viewers would be better from a market competition standpoint. Rather than pro coach reacts, maybe pro coach analysis predictions. Yeah, I could have done that. I could have done that. Maybe that makes more sense for next time. Midstream thumbnail advice from Val? Absolutely. Absolutely. Why not? I joke about clickbait or come up with joke titles with what? No, it's fine. It's fine. We're all just having fun. I'm not worried. And I don't think this is too far over the line for clickbait, guys. Like, let's see how we're doing on viewers. We're probably lower now because we've gone into it a bit. No, we're good. This is fine. Okay. It's fine. Just good timing. Exactly. We were talking crap. Didn't think you'd actually do it. I really don't. I'm not worried about this thumbnail. This thumbnail isn't bothering me. Okay. Then we've got G's Ryan just joined. How's it going? Hey, G's. Good to have you here. Good to have you here. Okay. Hate losing tower. I lose there way too often. Well, then you clearly aren't good enough at Sim. That's the problem. Hey, Temporal, we need to see the summer scarf soon. Okay, Scott Frey. Good to see you again. Good to see you. There was this one you missed a bit. Okay, perfect. From Malcolm, while hit scan nerf is a relative buff to projectiles within the DPS class, doesn't this just make tanks relatively stronger against the weakest projectile close range? That would be true, except that tanks have almost consistently been nerfed. Tanks haven't seen serious buffs. So the last serious buff that we got for tanks, there's been 2 of them. There was Reinhardt got 50 increased health and 50 more armor, not a health to armor conversion, just got 50 more armor, and that's since been reverted. And Ryan got 10 more damage on his swing. The other buff that we've had in the last quite a bit of time is we had the Winston got 50 of his health converted to armor, and that did stick. So we had a Winston buff and a Ryan buff. So if we look at our tanks, we can see here we've in the relatively recent future, recent past, we've had a Ryan buff and we've had a Winston buff, and we've had part of that Ryan buff reverted. So we've had part of that Ryan buff reverted. We've also had Orisa lose her. She had a buff to her fortify. It really didn't make much difference. We've had Orisa lose her halt distance, which was the most powerful piece of her kit, so that absolutely mattered. We saw Hog get a buff, sure. We did see Hog get a buff. Diva is not nearly as oppressive as she used to be. I guess those aren't recent nerfs, but she's not nearly as oppressive as she used to be. Zarya has lost her energy maintenance even more, so meaningful nerfs there. Sigma's been nerfed quite a few times, partially reverted, but nerfed quite a few times. And Bull had his boop range decreased as well as his shield strength decreased and hasn't had that reverted. So, like, if we look at how the tanks are trending, the tanks are mostly being weakened. So, with the tanks mostly being weakened overall, I'm not too worried about the DPS power compared to tanks. Now, I might be worried about DPS power compared to tanks as time goes forward here, because I might be looking at this and going, "Hey, what are we doing? Maybe we need tanks to be more powerful than DPS if we're doing 5-person Overwatch, and that's how we're doing it. That might be a necessity, or it might not. You can do it without it, but it create some interesting decision making on Blizzard's part of what are you doing? Is this going to be a king or queen piece or isn't it if you're only going to have one of it? But for Overwatch 1 that we're currently playing, I'm not currently worried about runaway tank power. Yes, tanks are some of the most influential pieces on the board right now, especially at the highest levels. People will tell you, "Hey, tank difference is game difference." Like, that's how it works. But a lot of that is because it's on the tank to not mess up and feed. Like, the tank getting blown up is so much. And that's not so much because it's such a valuable piece, but because what it has to do is so dangerous that they're relatively easy to blow up. And while Winston did get the buff, that buff, I don't even think that buff caught him up to old Wrecking Ball. I think Wrecking Ball just got nerfed enough that between the buff and the nerf, he saw some play. And it's not like he hard took over at that point. He was competing with, yes, Orion that was also buffed, but to me, it doesn't look like tanks are too strong right now. I can certainly understand where concern of that is coming from, and tanks are very influential, don't get me wrong, but I'm not currently looking at tanks and feeling like they're oppressive. I'm seeing tanks are mostly moving in a nerfed direction. So, yes, relative to tanks, DPS did just get hit because the best damage dealers just got hit in some ways, but I think it's more important of, hey, the damage dealers relative to themselves got brought to a more even level, and I'm not seeing us, A, goats can't happen. You're required to run 2 damage dealers. B, I have seen tanks mostly trending downwards in terms of their power level. Mm-hmm. What do you think about giving Tracer 175 HP? No. And maybe nerfing her another way? I remember SBV saying Tracer gets one shot by everything and suggesting the change for the April Fool's patch. The April Fool's patch was garbage, and it was an opportunity for people to take it seriously and be like, see what we can do, etc. And it was thrown away. I wasn't really a fan that, hey, this opportunity is here, and it's going to get sort of flushed down the toilet like this. But hey. No, I would not be a fan of increasing Tracer's HP. I wouldn't be a fan of that. I honestly, Tracer makes sense how she is. Like, you can nerf Tracer if you want. I'm okay with adjusting pieces of Tracer. You can adjust Tracer's pulse bomb. You can adjust the range increment on it. You can adjust the damage on it. You can play with Tracer's fall off damage and distances like you have. You could play with her spread a little bit if you wanted. I probably wouldn't change her reload timings or her blink timings because they're too integral. It's too much of a memorized skill. It's too much of people have put thousands of hours into mastering that, and I don't like betraying people mastering skills that way. Some level of it is unavoidable if you're adjusting heroes because breakpoints change, but that would be one that I wouldn't want to change. On the other hand, Blizzard has not shied away from doing that on other heroes, but I think that would be unfortunate. If you wanted to change Tracer, I would not do it by making her less vulnerable to spam by giving her more health. I would instead go, okay, if we want to make her, I wouldn't make her less vulnerable. Like, I just wouldn't make her less vulnerable. If you want to make Tracer better or worse, I would be playing with her damage. And that might be her ult. Like I said, fall off. Might be total damage, might be how generous or ungenerous the stickiness of it is. It might be, again, the amount of spread that her weapon's going to have. It might be the fall off range that her weapon has, but I really wouldn't be giving Tracer more survivability right now. And I wouldn't be pulling survivability by like taking away a blink to give her more health either. I guess you could play with the cooldown on recall. That wouldn't bother me. I'm friends with Frenzy. If you remember coaching him a few weeks ago. Excellent. Excellent. Happy to hear it. Happy to hear it. So you're signing up for coaching soon, right? Right? Okay. Jumbo, I hate Overwatch. I lose way too often. I hear you, Jumbo. I hear you. You're close. You're close. You might not be close this second, but your skills are close. You're right about to break over that barrier. You can feel it. That said, don't focus on the barrier too much. Keep focus on working on those skills. And if you want a session, you can reach out to me. That offer's still on the table. Okay. Crunch, let me know if there's any more in terms of chat here, because that looks like we had caught up, but in catching up, we may have generated more responses. How do aspiring coaches approach changes like these? That is an excellent question. So what an aspiring coach would do to approach a situation like this, to try to figure out what are we going to do, what does this mean for the meta, and what are we going to play, is a couple things. You've got to think about, okay, what is the meta currently? Oh, let's change that. You've got to think about a couple things. What is the meta currently? Okay, what is the meta currently? I know what the meta currently is. Does this affect any meta heroes? Yes or no? Does this affect any heroes that are anchoring the meta? Because if you really understand the meta, you understand that heroes are anchoring metas, sometimes whether they're being played or not. And you can kind of get that by understanding how the game works in terms of the relationship between poke, dive, and brawl. And you can also get that by understanding how the previous meta got us to this one, in terms of like, okay, even if you don't see a hero being played, they were being played a lot in the last patch, and the reason that last patch's meta isn't being played, or the reason maybe the previous meta isn't being played if there isn't a patch, is because people solved it like this. So if you really understand enough about why the meta is the meta, you have a decent grasp of what's sort of holding it as the meta, what's causing it to be the meta in terms of other heroes and other composition options that people have some degree of mastery over. An example of that would be when we had double sniper just an easy example of that would be when we had double sniper in the form of Hanzo plus Widow back in the Owl Season 1 playoffs, I believe it was. And that meta was being heavily enforced by the existence of Original Brig. Original Brig was not seeing much playtime, but that meta was heavily being influenced by it. So you've got to be aware of those kinds of factors. But if you understand what's holding things as meta, then you can look at a patch. You can look at a patch like this and go, okay, if I'm looking at a patch like this, what does this change? Is it affecting anyone in the meta, or is it affecting anything that is anchoring the meta? And if it's targeting the direct meta, is that just going to revert us to a previous meta? Or if it's targeting the direct meta and we're in a poke meta, for example, is that going to bring us into what poke is strong against? Because poke won't be able to check what it's strong against anymore. So if you were to look at this and, for example, say, hey, we are in, if you pretend, hey, let's pretend that we're in a hard poke meta right now and say, well, we're in a hard poke meta and we've nerfed our hit scan. So if we've nerfed our hit scan and hit scan make up a big portion of the poke meta, well, hit scan is strong against brawl and weak against dive. So we could theoretically be in a situation where it makes sense to go try to play more Brawl, more Reinhardt, more Reaper, more Mei type stuff, because the weakness of Brawl, which should be poke, has been put in check a little bit. But then you understand the support structure of the meta in the game at the time and go, well, no, that's not really going to work because Echo still exists and Echo is going to do X, Y, Z. Now, I put out a simplified version and I'm not actually analyzing the current meta by doing that, but that would be how an aspiring coach would think about it. They'd think about what is the current meta, what are the sort of the previous relevant metas that are sort of enforcing it, and does this target any heroes that are in the meta or any heroes that are helping support the meta with how they exist, like that Brig example did? And then from there, you go, okay, I have a couple good guesses of where the meta is going to go now, direction wise, and I have to decide which of those guesses I think are the best. And now with my team that I practice with, we're going to scrim and we're going to try, assuming that we're on a patch that makes sense. Because if you are going into playoffs, for example, and playoffs are going to be on the previous patch, or if you're finishing your section of the tournament on the previous patch, well, you'll get more information because you'll get to hear from your sources and from other people in the scene what's happening in scrims, and you'll get more data so you don't have to make a decision yet. But if you're immediately going and practicing and playing on the next patch because you don't have something that's locking you into it, then you're going to go, okay, these are my two best guesses of the direction that we're going. So we'll either keep playing what we're playing, or we'll try one or two of these and we'll adjust based on what we see from our opponents, what our opponents do to adjust to us, and then we're going to continue to put our feelers out there and reach around the scene and go, hey, who's going to share what, etc. Because the scene does talk to each other. Like, the scene does talk to each other. They're not going to just be like, oh, this is the meta, this is exactly what you need to practice. They won't tell you that. But players try out for different teams, even when they're on your team, because they're looking to go up to the next level. Maybe they're looking to go from open division and they're giving out a contenders tryout. Maybe they're in contenders and they have an owl tryout. Maybe they're on contenders team and they want to try out for a academy team. Maybe they're going to go try out for a collegiate team, whatever may happen. And coaches have their networks where they talk to each other and they go, hey, I'm coaching maybe they're coaching a contenders team, but they're helping someone build a project team as a favor, or something along those lines, where people go around and they get their information and they come back with it. So that's sort of how all that works for a coach. Hopefully that answered the question. Do you think a Tracer nerf is coming? Maybe the devs think Tracer should be strong because of the skill requirement. Bastion, the true anchor for all metas. There you go. There you go. Do I think a Tracer nerf is incoming? Not particularly. We've played with her range. I think we've played with her range a couple times recently, even. And she's a powerful hero. She's a powerful hero. I wouldn't object to a nerf to her. Like, if we went, hey, we're going to nerf Tracer, we're going to decrease her range again, or we're going to decrease the fall off on our pulse bomb so that if it's not a stick, it's much less threatening. Neither of those things would particularly bother me. I would be perfectly fine with either of those. I think those could even in some ways be good. Again, it's one of those things where she's good, but not like absolutely wild. She's good. She's one of the stronger heroes. I think she's less. I find metas where she's powerful less boring than metas where the one we had, for example, where McCree is powerful. That's not me saying the last couple metas were super boring or anything, but I find Tracer and I find dive gameplay in general, I'm just a little biased. I enjoy that type of gameplay. I'd be fine with the nerfs that I just listed for her as things to tinker with to adjust, though. Do I think that they're going to target her? No, not particularly. I don't think, well, I think she's strong. She's not getting a silly number of complaints right now. She's not super painful to play against right now. And you also have to remember that, based on the data, I think everything sub diamond or maybe everything sub masters, Tracer ends up with negative win rates even in Tracer metas. Like, it's it's not as bad as the Bastion example, but it's one of those things where you do want to be a little careful because people play it wrong, and then how rough do you want it to be, etc. And we're not talking about, hey, bronze can't handle it or silver can't handle it. We're talking about like only 3% of the ladder can handle it correctly. By handle it correctly, I mean she's actually good in type situation. Okay. I'll give it another second to transpose any chat over here that I'm missing because, again, my chat seems to be broken, which is unfortunate. Just another, probably not minute if I don't see anything, but I'll give it another moment to transpose messages. Again, if you guys are enjoying the content, please do hit that like button down there. If you'd like to see more content like this and you're not already subscribed, please do go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well, so that you can perhaps get these in your YouTube feed. Or if you want to really be a part of these in the future so that you can get in here for the discussion in that Discord, you can get your roles, and with that roles in the get notification section under streaming, you can get those pings when we go live. Okay, and Crunch says I have my snipping tool ready for any quick last ones, which I'm not seeing. So I think we're going to go ahead and call it here. Thanks, guys. Temporal out.